Ladies and gentlemen, we're back today. We've got somebody really special. I'm going to have her introduce herself because she's that awesome. Who are you?
Thanks, Chris. My name is Laura Hosman. I'm co-founder and co-director of the SolarSPELL initiative at Arizona State University, and I'm also faculty and associate professor at Arizona State.
So it's fair to say that you've been to some schooling in your day.
Yes. I loved school so much that I never left.
Yeah, the people that stay there for long enough, you get a special title too, Ph.D. So how did you start your academic journey? I want to start here and kind of feel you out, see who I'm dealing with here. But
Okay.
you traveled all over. You've been to overseas going to school. You've been within the United States all over. Take me through a little bit of what got you interested in a school, but also your particular field.
You're right that I've been a bit of a nomad. So I finished my undergraduate degree and realized that I didn't have enough education, I felt, to be able to understand the things that I wanted to understand, speak intelligently about the things that I wanted to be considered, an expert on. And so I went for my first master's degree, and that was in international relations. And then I need economics to be able to speak knowledgeably about what I'm interested in. And so then I went for economics, and part of the economics degree was a Ph.D. in political economy and public policy, which kind of brought together my undergrad in politics, master's in international relations, master's in economics, and then adding public policy to the mix at the end. So basically almost all of the social sciences. And then after all was said and done, I looked at everything I had studied, and I realized, what I've actually been looking at the whole time is international development. That's what I'm interested in. So even though I don't have a degree in that particular area, that's what I have been focused on, interested in, passionate about, despite the names of my degrees.
But there's a certain kind of passion behind the idea of international development, or what you do now, which maybe we should just jump right into the SolarSPELL thing, because this is really interesting, but also kind of, you must be an empathetic person too.
One tries. I actually think that that's one of the most important skills that one needs for international development, because if one isn't coming from the place and the mindset that one's trying to work in, empathy is a non-missable skill. It's you have to have it to have effectiveness in what you're doing. But we can return to that. And I forget what the question was.
The other question is your SolarSPELL.
The SolarSPELL.
Yeah. So what is that?
It is a global education and information literacy initiative that we run at Arizona State University. And we're focused on bringing localized libraries to places where people may not have access to information, may not have connectivity to the internet, may struggle to even have electricity. And so bringing appropriate content, or the desired content, a library is full of content that people have asked us for, to places that are unconnected or have very limited connectivity, and then working with them to build the unmissable, again, skill of information literacy, and being able to make empowering decisions based on access to information.
Mm-hmm. And these like computers that come preloaded with certain amount of educational materials that people can have access to. Is that right?
That's right.
That's great. I mean, that's incredible. So people that want to work in the same field as you, are there many openings? Is it something that you have to go to school for, or how often is it being done?
It's helpful to go to school for it, but not necessary, because there are always ways to get into fields if you don't have a degree necessarily in that area. There's also no end of ways that people who have different degrees can get involved. I do think it takes an interest in it, in the area, empathy, desire to make the world a better place, a desire to understand how the world works, why it is the way it is, and patience.
Yeah, patience in almost anything is incredibly helpful, and the older
Yeah.
older you get, the more you realize it.
Yes.
So, as technology is progressing and time is going on, in the next decade or so, what do you think? How will the improvement of technology actually assist your ability to do your job better? Are you hoping that computers will get cheaper? I'm assuming.
So one of the things that SolarSPELL is doing our best to realize is building people's internet readiness skills. So half the world is actually not connected to the internet, 4 billion people. And in truth, those of us who are hyper connected, like you and me over a video call, many people don't realize, number one, that half the world has never connected. But if you have never been to a place that is unconnected, chances are you don't also realize that there's no such thing as unlimited internet in outside of Western wealthy countries. If that's the case, you're paying for the internet by the byte. It's expensive. It's a scarce resource. So you're rationing your use. But add to that, if you don't speak English or one of the major languages that's available on the internet, if you are one of the thousands of if the language that you speak is one of the thousands that is completely absent from the internet or very, scarce on the internet, then it's likely that you're not finding information that isn't relevant to you. But add on top of that the complication that if you've never had access to information in your life, which again is the case for at least half the world's population, because libraries aren't everywhere, newspapers don't reach everyone, et cetera. There's a lot of people who aren't literate. But more than that, information literacy is a higher skill set, and you almost by definition can't reach that higher skill set if you haven't had access to information. Putting all of those things together, right? Lack of a skill set, lack of reading in English, writing in English, creating, having that mindset, lack of access to the internet, all of these things means that we have about at least 4 billion, probably closer to 6 billion people who don't have the ability to make empowering use of the internet.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's exactly what we're trying to address with SolarSPELL by bringing the best of the information that's available on the internet to people who don't have it yet and building internet ready skills before the internet reaches them. So what do I think in 10 years? I would like the whole world be connected to the internet, but that everyone has the capabilities to make wise use of the information that's available to them.
This is a great point, because we don't want to give them social media and other things that are ruining our lives and say, well, we want you to have it too. Maybe let's just give them the best of the best. And then that's probably a good idea. And I hope in the next decade that we kind of rein in some of the more toxic parts of the internet and can use it for good.
Right.
So you've also worked with public-private partnerships in your projects in developing countries. What is it like working with in between public and private? What's the difference there? And do you ever feel under pressure from dancing with the devil as far as as the people, academics and scientists say, when you go private, you're going to the dark side. Any challenges with that or lessons learned? The
challenges that I've seen are, so the public-private partnerships that I examined tended to be those that were formed by USAID, so the United States Agency for International. And the 3 that I wrote papers about were some of the most successful, I think, that USAID is proud of, and putting together a partnership that had entities that ranged from small local organizations to medium-sized local banks to the government of that country to USAID being a partner. they were well formed. The one obstacle that it's really hard to get over, and I don't know how one would get over this, is the fact that a development organization, by definition, has projects that have a time delimitation, right? So it's a 3-year project. So let's put all these partners together. Let's have the most promising project ever at $5 million a year. And then after 3 years, that funding disappears. Is anyone set up for success? With the $5 million, which is a vast, enormous amount for a developing country, if that just dries up after 3 years, and that was the plan, is that a recipe for success? So what I was finding was the partnerships themselves were well thought out, well formed. Hooray for that aspect. The fact that USAID and all development organizations that are governmental development organizations around the world that I am aware of have a short time frame to them. So until that would change, I don't see a better outcome for the types of public-private partnerships that I was seeing.
Do you think the distribution of funds is done well? Do you think they accurately put money into the right places? I mean, obviously, your project is a combination of public and private, right? So do you have to write grants in order to accomplish what you have to accomplish?
Yes. SolarSPELL runs like a nonprofit within a university, and we fundraise for every aspect of our 7-person staff, and we have about 100 students who are engaged every year with our initiative, who are generally not paid. So we are applying for grants. We are relying on philanthropic funding. It is a mix of funding. Yet it was extremely important to me to be based at a public university, because a library, and we are a library initiative, doesn't have a profit consideration, right? I cannot name a library out there that is a for-profit concern. And I don't think that they should be. The information should be free, and especially educational information. And so being housed and living at a public university, and by the way, our public university has a charter that is, we define ourselves by whom we include, how they succeed, and, we doing excellent work? Are we serving the communities around us? Are we including people instead of excluding people? Because most US universities are built on exclusion. And Arizona State has turned that around and said, let's build ourselves on inclusion. Let's completely transform what an American university looks like. And this is just a great place to be. So I don't know that that SolarSPELL would exist in the form that it is at any other university in the US.
I agree with you. Thank God that there's still some amount of public money for doing things that don't have a profit motive attached to them, because obviously it just never really works out too well when you put a greedy multinational corporation behind things and try to squeeze out a profit of it. It's good to hear. So you've traveled extensively for your research and what you're doing. Africa sounds like an interesting place. How many times have you been, and what are some of the challenges you faced there with the project, but also what was it like being there?
I guess that I have been to various countries on the continent maybe 25 times now. The challenges there are, okay, within the SolarSPELL initiative, the one thing that seems to be in common for all of the places that want to work with us are that information is scarce. And I had actually started out before SolarSPELL working on projects that were about bringing internet connectivity to various places around the world, the Pacific Islands, the Caribbean, and decided that instead of bringing the internet, which was bringing in many cases harm, I probably shouldn't say this, but everywhere we went, we would hear terrible stories about porn being brought to places, kids having access to it without knowing what it was. But we also know that, gambling is the next vice that makes the internet go round. And so everywhere we went, we were hearing about when people would first get the internet. First, there's the porn epidemic, the gambling epidemic, then. And I also remember going to the Federated States of Micronesia, and this was 2016 probably. They would tell me, we have a new disease in town. It's called Facebook. Yeah. And that was 2016, and it's only gotten more widespread since then. And we've seen that social media can bring, from a professor being killed in Ethiopia because of a post that he made, all the way to Facebook admitting complicity in the genocide in Myanmar.
Right.
And so these are exactly the things that I'm talking about. Without information literacy, how do you know what's trustworthy, who to believe, what serves you, where to go to find the information that is trustworthy, truthful, and therefore make the internet a positive place? So those are the information literacy skills, figuring out how do you do research, who do you believe, how do you assess information, how do you therefore incorporate it into your life? Those are the skill sets that we're trying to bring with the libraries. No matter whether our libraries are our education libraries that go into primary or secondary schools, or our health libraries that are going into clinics and hospitals, or our agriculture libraries that are going out with agriculture extension workers to the farmers.
Yeah, and you get a pretty good curriculum of pre-decided basic facts on all these topics, and sort of aggregate them into a SD card, and then these people have this access forever. It's like having thousands and thousands of books in a small little, in your pocket, basically.
And the library 100% in partnership with local partners. So we know that it's the information that they want to see on a library. And then the partnership continues in terms of training. So again, if you have never had access to a library before, information literacy isn't you're not born with it. And so building up that skill set and building up how to know which information to search for in the library, they're the ones, the partners in the field are the ones who are building the long-term skill sets that people really need to make empowering decisions in their lives.
That's great. But so it sounds like you travel a lot. So are you somebody who has always liked to travel? And do you enjoy the food and everything when you go over there? What's your favorite spot to go?
Oh my goodness. Those were a lot of questions.
Well, I want to know all of the answers.
My very first time overseas was during a study abroad to London when I was 20. And I realized that the political science that I was studying for my undergrad, I had been focused on domestic U.S. politics. And after that internship, I thought, forget the United States. That's not interesting to me anymore. All I want to do is international and travel and see more of the world. And so one of the best things that has happened for me is that I've been able not only to travel, but to bring others with me. And so whether it's students, whether it's other faculty and others, and to see the world and the ability to travel through their eyes, and then obviously the people that we're meeting, and to be able to get to know them and hear about their lives, and again, do our best with empathy to try to understand their world, their lives. If we're coming to them and saying, okay, how do we work together? Is there any expertise that we can bring you? What expertise can you bring us, so that we can work together and try to find, ways forward with the challenges. So yes, I absolutely love traveling. I have since my first opportunity to travel, and it would be super difficult for me to pick a favorite spot.
Okay, how about
I have a new favorite spot every time I go somewhere new. So,
but so you're still, what's on the bucket list? Where are you like, oh, I want to go there?
So one of my favorite places I would say is Vanuatu, and in the Pacific Islands.
Gesundheit. What's it called?
Vanuatu.
Okay. All right.
We actually launched SolarSPELL in the Pacific Islands. I felt the Pacific Islands were the most remote, most isolated on Earth. And if we could prove our concept there, we could do it anywhere. And so we actually started in Micronesia, Vanuatu, Samoa, Tonga, Fiji, and I love the Pacific Islands. So we haven't been able to go back since the pandemic, and that's weighing heavily on my heart.
Oh, that's a shame. Oh, it's almost over. The economy can't afford to have a pandemic, so they turned it off. It doesn't exist anymore.
It's done now.
It's done now. We're done with that. We're moving on. Um, and on just one more question, any delicious dishes that you've had overseas? This is an important question, by the way.
So I'm a vegetarian.
I'm a vegan.
Okay, it can be difficult to travel.
Oh, tell me about it.
So, yeah. So I like that question. I'm not sure that I can name any places where it's easy to be a vegetarian where I like to travel. So
can you get like a stir fry with tofu or something?
Yeah, tofu not so widely, but I can always bring peanuts or protein with me wherever I travel. But stir fry with vegetables you can get just about anywhere. But protein options are more limited for vegetarians and vegans around the world.
Yeah, that's true. You have to plan ahead. That's why I always keep almonds in my pocket everywhere I go. So obviously you're doing awesome work. You're out there trying to make the world a better place. I can really appreciate that. What are some ways that these projects that you're doing will have like a lasting and sustainable impact? What's your idea for trying to do it into the future and have it be, teach a man to fish?
Yes, that is everything about. I kind of hate that cliche because it's such a cliche, but it is truly everything that we're about. Building skills locally, bringing libraries to places that didn't before, and now they have a library and they can build up the library, and having information literacy and being able to train others in all of that in the skill set. So that is, at the end of the day, that describes everything. If only we could come up with a less cliche. But building the local skills is what we're doing. So that, and I feel quite strongly that that's what the purpose of education should be, is empowering others in every class setting that we can come up with. That's what should happen in an education setting. People are learning from each other.
Yeah. And I hope that we overcome all the obstacles that we have to overcome also in the first world, or, because we're going through our own sort of period right now. And I have feeling that maybe even these countries that you're going and helping in, maybe they'll be able to surpass some of the mistakes we've made and kind of leap over that and say, well, here's what not to do. And take your wonderful computers that you're making and just sort of start from scratch. Do you see a lot of stuff in your travels? I know that you went to Micronesia, and you've been to Africa as well?
Yeah.
So do you see things that they do that do exactly like I said, which is like skip over? Do they still have family values? What are some contrasts between America and these countries that you've been to?
One of the biggest things that I think about when I think about the United States is our passion for individualism. And that is what we're exporting to the rest of the world in many cases. And it's something that is undermining, I think, our own ability to have community, and community makes us resilient. So something is very much breaking down in the United States in terms of our social fabric, our communities. Libraries can serve as building up that social fabric, but there has to be more to it than just libraries. And the places that we work, community, family, these concepts they're just far more important. And so it can be a really good thing to introduce libraries into them. I'll give you one example. In Fiji, we had a Peace Corps volunteer and a local teacher that we trained on the library. And at their school, their 8th graders got the exit to go from primary school to secondary school. The number of students who passed that exam and could study in secondary school leapt after they were using the library. And so that's wonderful news in itself. But because we had an entree and a really long conversation with the folks there, we also got that community pride swelled because their 8th graders had done better than ever before. They felt this whole sense of, community pride. The younger siblings of those 8th graders were suddenly expected, they're going to pass that exam too because older brother or sister did. And so it's now expected of you too. And the parents whose students had not just the 8th graders, but all along the way, whose math skills improved from having the math content on the library, they were able to do better with reconciling their books if they had a small business or running the farm. So there are so many small social impact repercussions of having access to information for the first time, even if you start in a school. And we need to have the opportunity to capture those from sending someone to the field to actually live in that location for a long time to find out what all of the social implications are. But
right. Well, you go in there later and you try to measure, find the metrics of if this is successful or not.
We do, but there's never enough time in the day for us to go and stay there for a really long period of time. So we also work with Peace Corps and Peace Corps volunteers, and that's one of the ways that we're both bringing someone who has information literacy skills and a library, and they're able to build those skills because those skills are not overnight. So it helps to have someone who's there for a few years. And then they're also frequently able to return and tell us the stories from the field that we wouldn't get because we don't live there. So,
yeah. And so as you're going there, you're teaching these people things through the giving them access to information and education. Are you and your team also learning things at the same time?
Absolutely. 100% always. I can't say that enough. Yes. So I will also, remember talking to a teacher in Fiji and learning from her that, it's been difficult for me because I've been moved around 5 years over the past 5 years. So then we learn, this is a cultural thing in Fiji that you don't necessarily teach where you live or come from this region. It can also really a lot to do with teacher morale if this, Ministry of Education is just moving them around and doesn't seem to have, that was probably not the best example, but we're learning the people that we're working with what their information needs are. But they will tell us once they start using the library, I want more content on leadership in my in my school. I want to teach the students about leadership. Can we please have some content about that on the library? And then we get to add it.
That's so cool. Or if they say, I want to learn how to grow the local crops, and maybe you don't know about that, and you say, whoa, I didn't know you guys had X, Y, or Z.
And that's actually why we created our agriculture library at all, because where we were going, they're mainly agricultural communities. And they wanted more information about, hey, climate change is affecting us. What can we do about it? Right. And so our agricultural library is not just about the local specific crops. It's also what can you do in the face of a changing climate?
Yeah. I would say include a lot of permaculture tips and stuff. All that kind of sustainable gardening stuff is really neat and very cool in the sense that it's permanent culture. Very cool. Could be very useful. Well, we got 1:30 left. What do you say we will end it there? We'll have you back. I want to check in with you and make sure that you're still doing well, saving the world, educating the people. I want to thank.
Being educated by them.
Yeah, it's symbiotic, right?
Right.
Laura Hosman, Ph.D., Arizona State. Go ahead and say your organization again, so we don't. And I'll put the link in the description, everybody.
Great. SolarSPELL and Arizona State University.
All right.
Did
That sounds about right. All right. Well,
Okay.
we'll say goodbye to everybody out here. Bye.
Bye.